The standard is 8.f.3. Interpret the equation y equals mx plus b as defining a linear function whose graph is a straight line. And our essential statement today is I can graph a line in slope-intercept form. So the first thing we need to know is, what is slope-intercept form? Well, slope-intercept form is written like this. It is y equals mx plus b. So the m stands for the slope, which is the rise over run, and the b stands for the y-intercept, the starting point. Now, don't ask me why they use the m and the b. I know those are completely random variables, but those are the variables used to represent the slope and the y-intercept. So we're going to go ahead and get into an example. So here we have graph y equals 1/2 x plus 3. So what we did before was we would create an xy table, and we would find points, and then we would plot those points, and then we would graph the line. But now we're just going to use our linear equation and find the things that we need in order to graph our line. So the first thing we need is we need our starting point. Our starting point is the y-intercept. So I'm going to go ahead and circle that. Whatever is at the very end of our linear equation is usually our y-intercept. In this case, it is the +3. So this is where I would start at +3. Now, you have to think back to what the y-intercept actually means. It's a point on the y-axis. So at +3 on the y-axis would be right here, and I'm going to go ahead and plot that point. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use the number in front of x, because that is my slope, in order to get to my second point. And you have to remember, slope is rise over run. So my rise is +1 and my run is +2. So from the point that I plotted, I'm going to rise 1 and run 2, and I'm going to make my second point. Now remember, you're finding your second point from the y-intercept, not from the middle, not from 0, not from the origin, but from your y-intercept. And then 2 points make a line. I'm going to go ahead and get my straight edge, my ruler, connect my dots, put arrows at the end, okay, to signify that's a line. And there we have our linear equation, y equals 1/2 x plus 3. All right, so what I have written over here on the left-hand side are a couple of hints, or not hints, they're steps. They're not really steps, but just something that we did to graph our line, okay? So the first thing we did was we plotted the y-intercept, okay? The next thing we did was we used the slope to get to the second point. And the last thing is 2 points make a line, therefore you connect that line, you draw your arrows, and there you have your linear equation. So I have a couple more examples for you, so I'm gonna go ahead and slide this up. And on the bottom of our page of notes, go ahead and draw 2 coordinate planes. Now feel free to pause the video at any time to be able to catch up on the notes, because I know I might be talking a little bit too fast. All right, our next example, graph y equals x minus 2. So let's go ahead and try to follow our steps. The first thing we need to do is we need to plot the y-intercept. So the y-intercept is over here at the end. If you notice, our y-intercept is -2. This is why on this example up here, I circled the sign in front of the 3. You need to take the sign in front of the y-intercept, okay, as well. You can't just take the number. It changes your whole equation. All right, so our start right here, our y-intercept is -2. So on my y-axis, I'm gonna go ahead and plot -2, which is down here. And then I need to take the number in front of x as my slope. But looking at this equation, what number is in front of x? Oh, we don't have a number. So what number is there? How many x's do we have? Well, we have 1x. So really there's like an invisible number 1 over there. So this right here is our slope. Now the next thing you need to think about is slope is rise over run. But in this situation, we have an integer. How do we make an integer into a fraction? Well, the way you do that was you put a 1 under it, okay? To make any integer into a fraction, you put a 1 under it. So now my slope becomes 1 over 1. So my rise is positive 1 and my run is positive 1. So here's my second point. And I'm going to go ahead and take my straight edge. I'm going to connect my dots. Put arrows at the end. And there I have my linear equation, y equals x minus 2. All right, and lastly, we have graph y equals 3x. Now, I know that all of these three equations look slightly different, okay? That's for a reason. I want you to see all of the different examples. So let's go ahead and try to start. Plot the y-intercept. Well, looking at this, we don't even have a y-intercept. What is going on? Well, what can I add here to the end? What number can I add to the end in order to not change the equation? And that would be plus 0, okay? So that doesn't change our equation. So one thing I need to let you know is when you don't see a visible y-intercept, it's kind of like having a plus 0 at the end. So you would always start at 0 at the origin, okay? And then we take the number in front of x, which is our slope, and we use this. Okay, this is our start. Sorry, this is our y-intercept, our start. And then we use the number in front of x, which is 3. And how do we make 3 into a fraction? Well, we put a 1 under it. And our slope is 3 over 1. So our rise is positive 3, 1, 2, 3. And our run is positive 1. And then 2 points make a line. I'm going to go ahead and take my straight edge, and then I'm going to connect my dots. Now, one thing I wanted you to notice with all of these examples is they're all positive slopes. So the lines all face the same direction, okay? The next lesson we'll have negative slopes, but when you start somewhere over here at the bottom and you go up, that signifies a positive slope, which you could also see in your equation. You notice all the slopes are positive, so that's depending on the steepness of the line, it'll be different, but they'll all be facing in the same direction. And lastly, on the left-hand side, I wrote down a couple of hints. Go ahead and feel free to pause the video for you to write down when you're working with these different kinds of linear equations. Oops. The first hint is slope is the number in front of x. There's always a number in front of x. If there is an x, there is a number in front of it, okay? When there is nothing in front of x, there really is a 1. You really have 1x still there, so the 1 is a little invisible, but it's still there. And when there is no visible b or y-intercept, you start at the origin because the y-intercept is 0. So those are a couple things to remember. All right, if you have any questions on how to graph a linear equation in slope-intercept form, please feel free to let me know.